Hello and welcome to She the People. We are back with Women's Writers Fest powered by Colors. It is our seventh year of putting together this unique festival. After a successful physical edition last month in Delhi, now we are back again with an online edition. Up next is our panel titled Changing Reading Habits in Children, and this panel is in collaboration with One Up Library, Learning Center, and Book Studio. Dalbir Kaur Madan, who is the founder and director of One Up Library, will be moderating this session. Before I hand over the session to her, here's a little bit about Dalbir. Dalbir holds a master's in education and an undergraduate degree in political science. She also has pursued various professional development courses in reading, language and literacy, and teaching methodologies from Harvard University, Teachers Reading and Writing College at Columbia University, and Lesley University. In 2011, she first created the One Up Library Bookstore and Experience Center in Amritsar. She brought the same One Up Library to New Delhi in August 2017. So, without wasting much time, I hand over the session to Dalbir for this discussion.
Thank you,
And thank you
Deepika.
all for joining us at She the People.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to this panel discussion about changing reading habits in children. Literacy researcher Marian Wolf talks about the written word as the basis for generating new and never before encountered shared thought. Our panelists today include champions and cheerleaders in schools and communities who have spearheaded awareness and change for promoting reading and writing as joyful and purposeful experience. It is my pleasure to be here with these thought leaders, and here I introduce our panelist today. Our first panelist is Ms. Ezette Grauf, Head of Teaching and Learning Heritage with over 20 years of experience as a school leader in education across continents, Australia, United Arab Emirates, and now her present work in India for last 5 years. Welcome, Ezet, to She the People and to this panel discussion. Our next panelist is Ms. Vimi Santos, Deputy Head Learning and Research Primary and Middle School at Dhirubhai Ambani School. She has been she believes relationships are key to transformation and change, an active member of Asia Pacific IB Educator Network and working in education for past 24 years as she leads change in IB schools. Thank you, Ms. Vimi, for your presence today. Our next panelist is Ms. Kavita Singh, Head Learning Resource Center, the Shri Ram School, Basant Vihar. Ms. Kavita's career spanned across countries, Singapore and India, where she had been teaching for 10 years in Singapore International School. With her, this experience in both the countries, today she leads the Learning Resource Center at Shri Ram School, heading a team of teachers and rewriting the way libraries and literacy programs can be conducted within school libraries. So, welcome, Ms. Kavita.
Thank you. Thank you. Really
Our
honored.
next, our next panelist is Ms. Himani Dalmia, a celebrated author, a certified baby toddler sleep specialist, co founder of Gentle Baby Sleep India, a social entrepreneur, but most of all, her hat as a parent to young children uh, always makes me in awe of the way she's raising and setting an example for parents as they raise their two young children. So, welcome, Himani.
Thank you. Thank you, Elvin.
Our last panelist to join is a friend, thought partner, Ms. Sonal Singh, Director Academics at the Nehru World School, Ghaziabad. She specializes in childhood education for past 16 years and is director of academics. At the same time, a reading enthusiast and parent of two young children, wanting and seeking changes in all communities. So, welcome, Sonal. Welcome to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, texts are places where power and weakness become visible and discussable, where learning and ignorance manifest themselves, where the structures that enable and constrain our thoughts and actions become palpable. As it, your work champions the work of literacy with reading and writing workshops and mentoring and coaching. The first literacy coaches, a team of 30 plus teachers for heritage schools. What changes have you witnessed in reading in your own community in last 5 years compared to your work in other countries?
Hmm. Well, my work in other countries has tended to be with whole school systems. So, in those contexts, I was usually working with government backing, and so that means government resources and mandates. But nevertheless, the process of change that I've adopted remains the same. And that is, if you want real change, you need many conditions to be just right. You need those implementing the change to understand why it's necessary. They have to believe in it as well. They need to feel it's actually possible. And very importantly, they need to be handed ownership and decision making to adjust to the students in front of them. And they need to have complete assurance that support will be there to solve problems and reflect on their progress along the way. To create these elements, heritage schools have given me two hugely important conditions. The first was time, and the other is trust. And then by giving me time and trust, then I could hand over that time and trust to the teachers and the coaches. To be honest with you, I've observed many Indian teachers, and I see that they are really diligently following the rules or plans that are given to them. But what I didn't want to do was give them a recipe that would ultimately fall apart without me or simply be replaced by another program 1 or 2 years down the line. I actually wanted to change their inner consciousness about what it means to be literate, so that having developed these understandings, they could never go back and they would never lose what they've learned. And at my right hand, of course, I had Dalbia. She was a sounding board and an additional presenter for me and added depth and context to that learning agenda. So the change I've seen is extremely positive. It's about understandings and attitudes. And this attitude runs through all layers of the organisation, and this includes the DD in the library, who now has a different relationship to books, and it includes the leadership team, who themselves participated in the training. And this rebirth manifests in the following ways. Firstly, commitment to resourcing libraries and reading resource rooms, commitments to people, these coaches and literacy teams, commitments to professional development. This is something ongoing and long-term, and I think that's critical. These coaches have done nearly 230 hours of professional development together with me, and it's not a course that they're doing, it's a growth undertaking. Commitments to time. They've all changed their timetables to increase their literacy time. If a student can't read with deep understanding, then what are we doing? And ownership by the coaches for working with their own teachers to review data, build teams, create their own PD, and track the progress. But I think you probably really want to hear about the changes in student outcomes. And if you take basic measures of reading, most children in schools like ours do very well. But we wanted to ensure that we took the toughest form of one-on-one assessment and that we were truthful with ourselves about the results. Initially, this was pretty confronting as we realised that students' reading sounded good, but their comprehension wasn't strong. Facing this took courage and trust, and I'm very proud to say that the data have improved exponentially and it's owned and understood by the teachers, and we can be truly proud of the kind of deep thinking work our teachers and students are doing. This is supported by invigorated attitudes to reading and books with a completely different kind of buzz and positivity in literacy classes and libraries. It's long-winded, but that's the best I can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezette. Time, trust, commitment, relationships, spreading the joy of learning in your community. Your words remind me, in fact, of Barack Obama's words, where he says knowledge is literally power, where it unlocks the gates of opportunity and success. We all have responsibilities as parents, as librarians, as educators, as politicians, and as citizens to instill in our children a love of reading so that we can give them a chance to fulfill their dreams. So, on this note, Miss Vimi, you have been a pioneer with IB schools in bringing school wide changes. How can schools play an important role to promote reading amongst children today?
I think I'm going to piggyback on what Ezette said because she's actually given quite the roadmap that schools could use today. But listening to her, I think it could be something as simple as a timetable change, 20 minutes a day that you can offer. But it can also go to be as large as a school-wide strategic plan where you actually put the systems and processes in place for that change to happen. Again, taking from what Ezwood said, the awareness, the intentionality, and the ability. All of those things have to work together for the school. So that analysis of data, where our children are, what are we going to do with that data, and that environment of trust with the teachers, because so often our teachers feel that their students' ability are a reflection of their teaching capacity. So I think schools have to be more open, and this is where we are. Now, what are we going to do about it? Because there are two different things playing there. So I think taking the children from where they are to moving forward in their progress, the school has to be very intentional and very honestly reflective of what they want. So it's not as elaborate. We don't have all the systems in places in every single school. So harness the potential, the teacher capacity that you have, harness the resources that you have to start out small and gradually build on it.
Thank you so much. Intention and reflection, two key words as we work with children day in and day out, whether in schools or outside schools. You're again one of the cues that I take from both Ezette's answers and your discussion is Sonia Sotomayor's words, how books are key that unlock the wisdom of yesterday and open the door to tomorrow. How reflection with books, around books, and reading aloud can bring about a change in any community. So, Ms. Kavita, keeping your entire experience in mind, and especially as your library heads a literacy program, centering Read Aloud and having a team of teacher librarians heading this program, a robust Read Aloud program, what positive and negative things have you witnessed in children's reading, especially in last 2-3 years with the COVID post and pre-COVID?
Thank you. I think it has been very comforting it was very comforting for the children to realize that they were not in this alone, that the whole world was on an online platform. And we found that it just gave them more access. The world came closer. There was more access to online resources, publishing houses, reading apps were available. They were free, and voracious, avid readers really took advantage of that. And a lot of families where you have family cultures of reading, some families where reading is in their genes, those families really maximized and capitalized on these. So children benefited. And at the same time, I think teachers benefited. You actually, for example, Storyline became so popular with the teachers. Every teacher was on Storyline to understand what read alouds were. Children were learning to emote and bring expression, and the reading never stopped because they could not go to libraries, they could not borrow books, and these resources really help. So that was positive, the online. And I would also say that lot of children, lot of individuals who had access to this were able to begin their own platforms. A lot of cultural Indian books, Indian authors, those are homegrown readers, authors, they started teaching reading. and it helped a lot of children not to fall between the cracks, and it continued. Parents learned, teachers learned, children learned, they took on the onus. So that was good in terms of online teaching and online reading, the resources that were available. Children became savvy. But on the negative side, we don't know how many of them really were thinking through. Did many of them fall between cracks? Because you also had communities where a lot of children were unable to fulfill the reading requirements as per the thinking that goes with reading. We as a school really benefited because we had smaller groups and we helped struggling readers take care of their reading needs. A lot of teacher training was happening, and that really helped a lot of our struggling readers not to fall between the cracks. But little bit of their vocabulary, and in the end, reading is it is a scientific process. So parents took on, but the way teachers are trained to teach reading and to deepen their thinking, that did happen with some, and with some it did not. With our school, we were lucky, but yet we are still trying to close gaps for some children. So it had its positives, negatives. There were some things were comforting and some things were jarring, I would say.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, because this is how things are. They always have positives and negatives, and it's not just leaning
Yes,
one way. As I think
absolutely.
about your answer, it makes me think how change is harder when it requires us to examine our values, our long held personal beliefs. So, on this note, Himani, I would like to understand from you, what is one change you have witnessed in reading as a growing child and today raising two children as readers?
Yeah, this question had me thinking because I was a voracious reader when I was growing up, and I always felt that I had everything I needed to make me a reader. And so I thought about what is it that's different for my children. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old now, but I, of course, work with, as a parent counselor, I work with many different children and families. And I would say that. The biggest difference is access. I think it's access to books. When I was growing up, the breadth and variety of children's literature that was available was nowhere close to what it is now. For example, even children's picture books, for example, children's picture books were not available the way that they are today, the way that they're viewed as literature, their artistic works, their literary works, and we have a huge variety of them available now. We definitely didn't when I was growing up. Very often, as I grew older and I was reading series, there would be books missing in the series, right, which would be very difficult to source. So, of course, dedicated children's bookshops now, libraries like One Up have completely changed the game. Of course, I mean, online platforms like Amazon have also completely changed the game because, in terms of access, it's so easy. For parents to source books and to actually nurture a child's interest by getting exactly what they need. Libraries in schools when I was growing up were minimalist, to be kind, right? They were which has completely changed as well. Especially, well, I wouldn't say it's completely changed, but it is changing. And a lot of the progressive schools, the ones that we're talking about here, and I'm hoping that change will trickle down from there as well. The schools that we have very conscientiously chosen for our children have had a focus on libraries and reading cultures, and that's a complete departure. I mean, I went to a fairly progressive school, but it didn't really have a library culture. The other thing is, when speaking about access, it's access to conversations around books and spaces dedicated to books. So again, like libraries or children's bookstores, which have events centered around storytelling and around books, they develop a further love for reading. They nurture, a child's interest in storytelling, and look at books as a cultural artifact in a in an interconnected way with lots of other cultural elements as well. There are also conversations, for example, for parents online. So there are lots of Facebook groups that are devoted to children's books and to reading. So a lot of parents who want to raise a reader and want to introduce their children to books but don't know how to go about it have somewhere to go. So they don't know how to go about it. They don't know where to start. Like, what are the books that they should buy? They need recommendations. So a lot of these online communities help parents to figure out what should be even the first 10 books that I buy, right? Otherwise, it can be a very overwhelming experience where you don't even know where to start. In my work as a sleep specialist, I focus a lot on bedtime reading, and I do specific workshops on bedtime reading as well. And honestly, one of the reasons that parents attend is because I actually recommend books to them for the age of their child, which and they're also able to talk to me and say, okay, how do I develop this ritual, right? And these are the obstacles I face, and I'm able to kind of talk to them about that. But just like that, there are actually several different opportunities and spaces for parents to get recommendations, to understand how they can raise a reader, how they can develop a reading culture. So really, it's just access to books and access to conversations around books and spaces centered on books.
That is wonder. That is so insightful. And when you have said it, you have made it, vocalized it, and made it visible for everyone around to see that yes, there is availability, there is access, and there are many ways to reach out and find the right books or find the right spaces. As we talk about change, Sonal, we also realize that it is important to make reading relevant, and it matters a lot. So, what is one change that you notice as a parent and also as a school director, especially in respect to reading and the changing habits of children?
Okay. So the way I'm really glad that in your question, you particularly mentioned reading habits and reading to children. Because I feel that one major change that I would like to talk about would be reading to children. And if I were to go back around 5 years, reading aloud to children, particularly once they were able to decode and read by themselves, was highly underrated among parents. In school, amongst our friends, amongst the community that we are a part of, it as soon as the child got to that 5 year, 6 year mark and started reading, the read alouds would sort of cease. However, I feel over the past few years, schools, along with literacy experts like you, and social media, like Himani very correctly pointed out, with so many different influencers, if I might use that word, are talking about reading, are talking about reading aloud to children. And this has indeed created more awareness regarding benefits of read aloud from an early age to a later age. I feel both points need to be, sort of highlighted here in terms of that change. Because today in our school, we do have parents of 10-year-olds asking teachers for read aloud recommendations, which is lovely. We see 7th graders, 8th graders immersed during class read aloud sessions. And I strongly believe that we as educators and parents are also waking up to the power of picture books, which again, Himani had highlighted, but we're waking up to the power of picture books well beyond the early years. For older children as well. And I personally find these changes moving us ahead and offering young children opportunities to fill their ears and fill their hearts with rich literature through the adults in their lives. And because, I mean, apart from the fact that the listening level of the child will always be higher than the reading level, the kind of bond that read aloud, a parent reading aloud to their child, a teacher reading aloud to their students, the kind of intimacy it creates, the kind of rich conversations it can lead to. I feel the power of read aloud needs to be highlighted even more. Even from a parent's viewpoint, I personally love the ritual of cuddling with my girls in the afternoon, at night, exploring new stories, leading to interesting conversations. And it just allows us to enjoy books together and each other as well. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. That was heartwarming. So at One Up, we read aloud to children, believing that libraries can share responsibility to read aloud individually and in groups to children. We can share the responsibility with parents and with schools. So on this note, Ezette, what are your views on changing dynamics in society with school role towards reading aloud to children and allotting time for reading aloud as a part of curriculum requirements?
Well, I'm kind of surprised I'm going to answer in the way I am, because I completely resonate with what everyone is saying. But I feel like I wouldn't call it an epiphany, but more like a slow burn recently, because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I'm a grandmother now, and I'm here watching my son as a parent and other parents of his sort of age group. My son was actually a reader at age 3. I did all those things. I read to him from birth until he was quite old, and he was a passionate reader. I'm watching now how busy he is as a parent. I'm watching all the options there are for the children around them and the adults. I'm watching how attention and focus is a struggle, for all of us. And despite his love for reading, despite having it drilled into him how important it is, I see the challenges we face in making it happen. So we know that parents reading to young children, as you've said, has significant impact on their reading development, providing for understandings, that something wonderful will emerge if you're patient. It provides an introduction to book language and provides experiences beyond their years, all of those things that you've described. And as educators, we can always recognise children who've been read to versus those who haven't. But there is, I think, a new imperative for schools, and it's to do with the collapse of sustained reading. Because after all, why do we send children to school? To be educated, right? So to experience more than we can do for them at home. And I think increasingly now home isn't able to do enough about developing and exercising this reading muscle. And I'm not talking about letters and sounds, of course, as you weren't. I'm talking about reading volume and being read to. And I think democracy requires the ability of us as a population to pay attention long enough to identify real problems, distinguish them from fantasies, recognise different perspectives and their merits, come up with solutions and develop those deeper understandings. And these statistics are really interesting. From 2004 to 2017, the proportion of men reading for pleasure has fallen 40%. And women, 29%. And 57% of Americans do not read a single book in a year. I'm not saying that I care about Americans more than others. It just they happen to have these statistics on average. Americans spend 17 minutes a day reading books and 5.4 hours on their phones. So whilst this is US data, I'm pretty sure this is a trend for all of us. So this is the imperative I'm talking about that sort of just hit me. It's not just about adding technology to the skill set our students need. It's our understanding about the gap that's being left by these technologies. Don't expect children to get what they need at home. And I don't think it's anyone's fault. It's just where we are. And schools and libraries need to pick up this gauntlet and accept that reality. Books, libraries, deep reading culture is part of what it means to be educated. So sure, we really want parents to engage with reading with their children. It's the very best thing but building the cognitive patience to think about something deeply or getting real considered information or engaging in vicarious fictional experience takes time. And as educators, then we need to do this critically important thing, adding time and people and resources to make it happen.
That is so important. And thank you for saying this because, as you said, it is great to see parents as role models, to be in company of people like you and create people who believe in this. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant that there are many who would want school to take up a larger role because reading is a doorway to power, to privilege, to building a mind, to cultivating self determination, to helping each of us come together to create a society steeped in reason and responsibility and held together by hope and humility. So, on this note, Ms. Vimi, what is one piece of advice you would share with teachers and generally with all parents whose children are going either in primary or middle school to develop reading amongst children? So, one advice for teachers, one advice for parents.
That's a little tough just to have one piece of advice. If
Give
I'll
us
say
two
one word,
advices.
I'm going to say one word for both of them, one piece of advice for both of them, and I'll elaborate. The one piece of advice for parents and for teachers is read. Read. Read as parents, and not just children's books, but read. Let your child see you reading. Engage with literature. Engage with the variety of literature that's out there, of text. As teachers, we don't give enough credit to that. How often do our students or our children see us reading? We're reading to them, but when are we reading? When are we developing that culture and that love and passion for reading? If we're always doing it as if it were some system or a tick box to be in place, but that passion for reading, those doors that you mentioned, Albir, that open up when you read a book, when you pick up a book. So I would say read to your child. But one thing I would say also while you're reading to your child is know your child. There are so many things out there, and we can give you the ingredients and we can give you a number of ingredients, but we cannot put that recipe together for you because your context is unique and different. So I would say know your child, listen to the advice that's given, but contextualize it with your child. The books that I loved, my son doesn't love. So I cannot say that, here, read this book, you're going to enjoy it. It doesn't work like that. And I think one of the things that I would say is make time for uninterrupted, sustained reading. And the reason I say this is because I've been on this panel for about half an hour. My phone has buzzed about 4 times. Put it aside. Actually focus on it as a parent. Put aside your devices and show the importance to your child of what reading and that time together means. Because I think right now with technology, with coding, with maker spaces, with all these things that are coming in, reading is kind of getting pushed a little bit to the side. And the importance is being pushed to the side. But we all know that if the success of children in school depends on their ability to read, their success in life depends on their ability, their critical literacy skills. So my advice is read.
No, thank you. You put it so well. And I think so. Your point about contextualizing what works for me may not work for my child. And knowing your child, knowing the readers in your classroom is so very integral. As I hear you, Ms. Vivian, talking about the phone and setting time aside from the digital devices, we do blame the digital world for the changing reading habits. We say kids are distracted because of internet. They are distracted by video, by television, by noisy homes, by too much homework, too many sports, too much pressure, by anything else we can think of that day. Parents don't care, parents care too much, parents don't support, parents support too much, and then there is this test. It's all about test also, testing and success also. So on this note, as we talk about digital world, as you think about Miss Vimi's advice to parents, what is one thing you would recommend to parents, Miss Kavita? How can parents balance online reading with reading apps, which are promoted even by schools today, and physical reading of books?
Okay, thank you. We are a school that does not believe in promoting online apps. We don't have our children that just we enjoy the sheer presence of browsing through physical books and just the immeasurable joy coming, exchanging, browsing, going through books, watching children sitting in little groups, discussing pictures, looking at that. We really believe in keeping that tradition going. And I think I'm very happy because at Singapore American School, where I was, our children were really reading, had a lot of apps, but we've managed to keep it away. But our parents do, and we do not stop them. It is the choice that they have to make as a family. But yes, when they are traveling and they do want, they ask for recommendations, we are always willing to give them. But yes, to keep the balance, I think, as Vimi said, know your child, know his reading needs, and have that reading time as a family, uninterrupted reading. Drop everything and read, dear time, just indulge and have even if you are a family that does not have a tradition of really reading a lot, this is a good time to create a new tradition. Start reading. They need to watch you, talk to them, have those conversations, have dialogues, small dialogues, and slowly make them tall, go deeper into their thinking. Because again, critical thinking, articulation, it's all so important, and that's going to spill into their writing. So parents need to, but it is the responsibility of the school, like you said, to keep, and libraries to keep emphasizing and focusing and pushing for deeper thinking. But yes, as parents, they can also keep the balance. If they want to keep a balance between apps, online, and gadgets, they can read aloud. They can just narrate stories. We all grew up listening to grandparents, parents narrating stories, making up stories. All of those, bring back all those little games their parents used to play with us around books, reread books. So parents should and must, I think, create that balance and also monitor what the children are reading online. That is so important. Do your book reviews before you press the button to click and say, yes, I got you that another book on Kindle or on your app. So look for apps that are well, read the reviews and have level reading. And along with that, keep your traditions, all that you grew up with. And if you're not a family that reads, you can begin today. It's never too late. On that note, yeah.
Thank you, Kavita ma'am. That is wonderful. As we talk about change in technology and distractions, Himani, what is one distraction in 21st century that you feel can change the reading habits amongst children positively or negatively?
Yeah, thanks, Dalbir. And I think my answer to this is linked to what you were saying earlier. I think it's just time. I think it's just the non availability of time. Children are overscheduled. There are, of course, too many distractions, but there's also just a lot of overscheduling. Now, there is, of course, a chunk of the day that goes into school. School timings are also becoming longer in some cases, and schools are trying to do interesting things as well. So that's another reason that school timings are becoming longer. Then there is this whole array of classes and activities, post-school classes and activities that children tend to go to. In some cases, it's a conscious decision on the part of the parent. They might not be at home. They want their child to be gainfully engaged in something. Even for parents who don't want to overschedule, my husband and I being a part of that set, the temptation is so high because there are actually so many interesting offerings, and you feel like, oh wow, like I would so love to do this. I would love to do art. I would love to do piano. I would love to do chess. I would love to do all of this, ballet and like Indian classical and all of it. It's very tempting, and then you have to kind of really stop yourself and draw that line and say that you're not going to do this. So because what children I feel lack today is downtime. It's just free time, to just do whatever they want to do, whether that's pretend play, whether that's walking around with a pencil and paper, whether it's just lying down and imagining things, getting bored, right? And I think that is when they will pick up a book, curl up on a couch and read, or read with the parent, right? It's just about having that time. I think it's very easy to vilify the screen, and say that that is the primary distraction in this era. And to an extent, yes, the screen is also a major distraction. The screen can also be used positively. I think that high quality children's programming, like good TV shows, intelligent ones, good intelligent movies, can very much feed into the storytelling culture in your family. And we can have intelligent conversations with the child about different stories or different films or TV shows and characters, develop their critical thinking and get them to understand layers of stories. So I don't think that is necessarily just a black and white evil, but I think that it needs to be moderated. It needs to be mediated by the parent. And I think that it's really just about that time. Now, one thing that we experienced during the pandemic, for example, is that we did have that time, which to quite an extent. I mean, there were other challenges, but Dalbir, as you know, we have a home library, which was created by my mother-in-law, who was a pioneering children's librarian. And as a gift to my first daughter, that my second daughter also benefited from, she created a home library for us. And that was like a savior for us during the pandemic, because throughout the day, whenever we had any kind of time, in between, we were trying to create all kinds of sensory activities and interesting things to do. But whenever we had 20 minutes free, 5 minutes free, right, long bedtime rituals, or we suddenly had these huge chunks of time where we could just curl up with books, and we would just get stacks of books and we would sit and read them. So seeing the contrast between what we could do then and what life is slowly turning into now, I can sort of see that change. And I think that downtime that I think we actually did have much more when we were growing up. There were just fewer offerings, I think. I think that is perhaps a loss.
So thinking about moderation, balance, downtime. And continuing the discussion, Sonal, what is one thing you've done as a parent to ensure kids can balance reading with other online and screen options?
Okay. I feel there'll be one thing that has really helped us create a reading culture, if I might call it that, in our home, has been surrounding our children with books. Books they choose and buy, books we buy for them, encouraging family to gift books as presents on birthdays and festivals. And the heart of our home is actually this room. In fact, this question of yours was the one that made me think I should probably sit here with this at the back. And, we spend so much time here in this room. It's got a little fireplace that we light up in winters, big, huge windows that let a lot of light in all year long. And honestly, the kids love spending their time here. We love spending our time here, and being surrounded by such lovely, engaging books encourages them to read. Alongside, there's one mantra which I've sort of followed, and so has Arnab, my husband, and that is read to, with, and by the child. So we read with them, wherein, a little bit we'll read, a little bit they'll read to us. We read to them through read alouds, and we read by them. So we have a book, they have a book, and we're just chilling and reading around them. And I feel that has really helped create, again, this kind of culture in our family. It's become such an integral part of their daily rhythm. Today, at 8 years of age and 6 years of age, books are a source of entertainment, information, and comfort for them. There are times when they're feeling overwhelmed and they just want to chill. And often I see, especially the elder one, just pick up a book she might have read a lot of times, something she might have read 2 years back that doesn't require her to think a lot, but she'll just grab that and sit with it because it just comforts her. I think that she finds it familiar, it soothes her. So I feel somewhere happy seeing them with books, and it's not as if they do not engage with screen at all. They enjoy playing Minecraft. They have quite a few favorite shows. I do enjoy watching Encanto with them for the nth time. But we limit screen to weekends. Weekdays are screen free in our home. So, and that is, I feel, one way in which we're able to sort of balance screen and non-screen. I think that's about it. Just resources, give them the right kind of books, keep them around them, and be with them. Get them to watch you read with them, and it'll happen. I mean, that's, yeah.
Thank you so much. So, on this note, reading with purpose and passion, with a curious mind and a skeptical eye, is a way to find yourself while crafting yourself to become independent of manipulation, of control, of a life determined by someone else. For me, and I think so for all of you, reading to children, whether in schools and at homes, matters because we want our children to be active, responsible citizens who are taking care and curating their life choices. On this note, thank you, Ezette. Thank you, Miss Vimi. Thank you, Miss Kavita. Thank you, Himani. Thank you, Sonal, for your time here and your presence. I hope, like I have learned so much today, so many ideas have got confirmed, and I felt, okay, we are on a right track for so many parents. It will be heartwarming and full of ideas of how, in spite of all the challenges, we can help children to think about why reading matters today. So, on this note, thank you so much.